Hello Facebook Live, how you doing? Happy Wednesday. Hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you've had a beautiful day. We're very excited tonight to be here with Marie France. She is a dietitian and nutritionist and counsellor, amongst many other things as well. She's originally from France and has lived here in Australia for almost 20 years. She has the most beautiful accent, which you'll hear in a moment. It's just absolutely beautiful. She's the founder and CEO of Fussy Eater Solutions and believes that parents, mothers in particular, are often not getting the support they need when faced with feeding issues and difficulties. Naturally, this can affect the relationship that babies, children and families have with feeding. As a counsellor, Marie uses these skills to help families regain the joy of eating, which I think everybody understands. We all have the joy of eating, but it can be taken, would you say taken away from people? Or
absolutely.
Yeah, from a very young age. So you help families regain that joy of eating. And we know that she can help you too. We're very fortunate to have Marie here with us tonight. How are you? How's your day been?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rachel.
It's okay.
I'm very glad to be contributing to Kiddipedia from now on.
We're very thrilled to have you, and you've even invited us into her house. You see her house is absolutely gorgeous.
And I've got dinner for you. I don't even know how I can do this on an empty stomach.
And we all, yeah, as you just said, we're very fortunate to have you as one of the guest contributors for Kiddipedia. And you've joined us as a subject matter expert in parents and mothers' relationship with feeding. We've got 3 key questions we're going to be asking Marie tonight. But before we do, I've actually published her first article this week with the title, Feeding a Child is Full of Challenges, Get the Support That Is Right for You. So we published it earlier on in the week. Can you tell us anything about that article?
Yes, so in the article I did mention when I first started to breastfeed my child, my first one, it was very daunting, and I remember the first month being so difficult. I wished it was just done and over with. And so, you know, you get these prenatal classes when you have before you have a baby, and then there's no postnatal classes, and you find yourself entering a new world of really challenging sometimes and stressful issues. And feeding is a very emotional issue. If you think about it, from the first time you put your child on your breast, it's not just feeding that matters or getting the nutrients in, it's also providing warmth and love and connection with your baby. So I find it very challenging, and I meet a lot of mothers who, you know, tell me about their stories of the difficulties they face. Sometimes it's with even professionals, and so in that case I recommend that they move on to the next professional who actually hears what they have to say. And sometimes it's just that they're quite lonely at home, dealing with all of it by themselves a lot of the time. And then it goes on with meals later on. So it can be really difficult.
Yeah.
If you're one of those moms who has no issues, then, well, cool, I mean, good for you. But it is challenging.
Yeah, it's good to know that people are out there that actually can offer that support and are experts in the field. There's a couple of, there's lots of information in the article. The whole article is extremely helpful, but there was just 2 things that I actually just extracted that, which I found really insightful. No more so than the rest of the article, but science is, so the science of feeding a child is not science. It starts with listening and trusting. Can you talk to us about that at all?
Yes, so look, I'm a nutritionist, I'm a dietitian, but I also come from a culture of eating with pleasure. And I found that in our Anglo-Saxon culture here, we tend to look at nutrients as what we need to get into our children. I'll often get parents to say that. And so that's science, right? The science of nutrients. But unfortunately, it's not how we can get our kids to feed according to what they need. What they need is to learn about foods, and what they need is to feel confident and connected with us. So it's about trusting also their appetite. I mean, I write on the capacity that children have to regulate their food intake. And so trusting a child to show us their hunger, and trusting them to satisfy this hunger is what I think is so important. And that, you know, is so easy to see with babies, particularly when they're breastfed. They'll tell you when they're full, and you're not going to get one more drop in. You might be tempted to get more drops in with formula, but overall babies very early on can tell you. And kids have this capacity. They tend to lose it when we, parents, insist that they should eat more.
So we're the ones that are force feeding onto them because we think that they're actually full, is what you're saying.
So 90% of parents don't believe their kids when their kids say they're full.
Why is that?
And I think, again, it's really linked to the culture, which is based on dietetics and getting nutrients in rather than just coming to the table to enjoy a time with parents and family. We're very focused on getting particular nutrients in.
It's a very different mindset shift, I think, from a European to an Australian American type of mindset, where we sort of live to work, don't the other way around type of thing. And we, as you said, it's more fuel based. Okay, we come home from work and let's eat so we can watch TV and then go to sleep and then go to work and do it all again. Where Europeans, I'm not sure if this is correct, but actually do it the better way around, and they live to live. And would it come from that mindset potentially?
That mindset, definitely in Europe, and in terms of fast eating, is really, really useful. It makes people's lives and mums' lives much easier, because the culture says that you have to find this happiness and this joy of eating around the table together. So it makes people's lives so much easier. And then there's the canteen, you know, and the canteen serves the foods, and then the kids go to the canteen. Mums can really relax a lot more in that environment, knowing that their kids have had, you know, quite a variety of food at lunch.
Yeah. Well, should we maybe get some questions?
Yes.
The first question is, you know, why are you so interested in that feeding relationship between mothers and their children?
Okay, well, I feel that I have compassion for mums because often they find themselves alone in the kitchen. Their husband's not back from work often, and they have to fix dinner, and then they have to fix dinner and feed screaming kids or whinging kids. It can be really challenging. So that's the one thing that, you know, I think it's so important to be compassionate with mums. The feeding relationship is so important because it determines the outcome with your child's ability to enjoy a variety of food in the long term. When it goes wrong, say if a child is really forced to eat certain foods, you know, we've all seen this video, by the way, where you know, half the population will find it really funny when the kids are forced to eat their vegetables and then gag. I don't know if you've seen it,
no,
but I will post it later on. And so half the population sees that as a gagging, as a laughable experiment.
Then it's a funny thing, but it's actually not meant to be funny.
When really it's pressure, and it always backfires. So that feeding relationship matters. We want to make it as positive and joyful and connected as possible.
Now, 95% of a child's brain capacity is fully developed by age of 5. So these patterns need to be developed up until that age. Would you say that that's part of why you focus so much on the infant? Or no? No?
Look, it's never too late because I work with children who are older, but I always say to parents when they're teenagers, it's really much more challenging then. And because you can't, you know, you might have control what your child was eating for a long time, but when they're teenagers, this is out of your hand. And then I always say you need to think long term. What do you want your child to grow into when they're an adult with regards to eating? And so often I'll have parents who say, you know, they want their child to eat more vegetables, but by the time we're done, they really want their child to grow into somebody who's comfortable, who loves food. Often they'll say, I want him or her to love food, to be able to go out with friends and enjoy variety, and to be confident so they don't have to measure or count calories in their plate so they can eat to hunger, because that guarantees, by the way, that your weight will be stable for the rest of your life, really. And so this is where we want to go with our kids.
Absolutely. Next question is, what is responsive feeding? What is responsive feeding?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, feeding relationship really matters, and feeding relationships are part of responsive feeding. So I would say it really starts with hunger. Hunger is a good cue to tell you that when you are feeding your child and making sure that they're hungry and that they're stopping when they're full, that's responsive feeding. Responsive feeding enables your children to learn about foods, and it enables them to learn to enjoy and like foods that they've never tasted before. And by the way, if they never offered these foods, they're never going to learn about them. And so, I think of snails, for instance, because I taught my kids to eat snails when they were very little.
Not out of the garden, but cooked.
Not cooked. But my friend has a daughter who's adopted and comes from India, and she spent a few first Christmas with us and did learn to enjoy snails. And then none of those kids would have Christmas without the snails. But I wanted them to learn, so I exposed them. So responsive feeding is really about giving the opportunities to kids to learn about foods. And it really is also about making sure that the ambiance or the atmosphere around eating is convivial.
I think the next interview we do, I'd love to sort of go further into that, actually, in understanding how parents can educate children in different ways, how to eat and try different foods, because I think a lot of parents are just like, oh, they give it to them once and well, they don't like it, so too hard, and then too hard basket, and then,
So when that happens, really, the question you can ask yourself is, why do I think it's just they don't like it and they're not going to have it anymore? I think you're thinking nutrients. You're thinking, oh my God, they have not eaten enough, or they haven't got the nutrients in their body. They're not going to grow. They're not going to develop. They're not. You're having all these questions. And the thing is, they can grow and they can develop, and there should always be enough food on your table and enough variety for them to find something to eat.
Yeah.
But I can talk to
we
you.
do another video on that, I think, which is great. Another question we have is, you talk about trust, appetite and connection in feeding. What do you mean?
Yeah, so as I said, when we come to the table, we should come to the table with appetite. So for children, that really starts with having good structure around meals. And
how do you put structure around meals? Time, like from every night.
Yeah, so you want 2.5 to 3 hours between meals. And look, when I talk to parents, sometimes they have a real difficulty with snacks because they think that kids are not eating enough. Often, mums will think their kids are not eating enough, so they think, well, if they give food all the time, they're going to get more food in. And I always say, you have to question that concept of getting more food in, because we don't get food in. It's their mouth, it's their body. You can't just get the food in. So I always ask about this question. And so it's about trusting that your child will eat what they need and how much they need.
How do you mean trust? Trusting that they're going to like the food?
So as I said, 90% of parents don't believe their children when their children say that. Yes.
So if they're saying that they're full, trusting that they're saying that they're full.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, or you can ask, have you had enough to eat? And then that's it. That's the end of the meal.
What about the other 10%? I'm playing devil's advocate.
Well, the other 10%, they trust their kids.
They do actually trust their kids.
No. 10% they actually trust that appetite is satisfied.
Yeah.
And I like to talk to adults about satisfaction in eating, because sometimes it's your best indicator that you've had enough food. So instead of trying to measure and count calories, say you have a piece of cake and you enjoy that chocolate cake and you really love that first spoon, and then that second spoon, there's no pleasure in it. And that's a very good indication that you've had enough.
That's interesting. And even for us as adults, actually, as well.
Learning to trust ourselves with our appetite, absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, look, there's so much we can speak about. We will be speaking about, again, with other Facebook Lives. But if people have got other questions for you, Marie, and or would like to get in contact with you about any other fussy eating issues or relationship with food, where can they get you? Nice.
So they can get me on fussyeater.com.au. I'm also on Instagram. I've got 1,800 followers. Woohoo! That's so exciting. I put lots of ideas for meals. I don't really put meal ideas for extreme fussy eaters because that's more work required with the families, but I always work around making sure that eventually we extend those range of foods that they can eat. And I'm on Facebook as well. I have a professional page, and I have a group that I run with a sleep consultant, which is called Mum Supported. And in it, we talk about sleep and eat, really, because we think these are the two issues that people and young mums struggle with. But then I talk to people who have children up to 14 years old, depending on the teenagers we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I love to talk to young adults as well who are fussy eaters, because I get them to really rebuild their relationship with eating.
Well, look, I think the article, as we mentioned before, that we published earlier on this week, was really, really helpful. Again, you can just jump onto the website, kittypedia.com.au. The title of Marie's article is Feeding the Child is Full of Challenges. Get the support that is right for you. If you jump onto the blog tab at the top of the website, you'll be able to see that. We would love to know also what subject and what questions you have specifically that related to you guys at home that Marie could answer in the next Facebook Live that could be helpful for you. So if you could put that into the comments, we can see the comments coming through now, but let us know specifically what questions we could answer for you that are going to be helpful. But thank you again for your time, Marie. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, I can see we finished because I can see a few questions, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, you can answer them.
Oh, look,
yeah,
I can see my son is 11 with ASD.
This is from Amanda. Yeah.
Hardly anything. Amanda, hi. I'm out of idea to get him to try new foods. So, so interesting with children on the autism spectrum. 11 is still an age where you might be able to do things. It depends, children on the autism spectrum, they might have issues with texture, with colors, with the sound, and there's a huge variety of kids on the spectrum as well. So I would say question the whole idea to get him to try new foods, and then present food on his plate, or not on his plate actually, on the table next to him so that perhaps he can see them. Children on the autism spectrum, they don't really get to be models so much, like they're not necessarily all going to look at you and how you eat and get the idea to eat like you do. It depends on where they are on the spectrum. But I have seen kids in France, by the way. I went and visited a few schools this summer, and I was astounded at what these kids ate, and I was astounded when they started. So it's always about having a variety of food on the table and not prompting them so much, but arousing curiosity perhaps in them. So not forcing, having the food there. And then, I have written an article you can find, but I mean, you may bridge with things that they like. For instance, cheese. Say your kid likes grated cheese, then you put that on the food that you're offering. He may like a particular color, then you work on these colors and try to extend. It's complicated, but it can be done, having no pressure to it. That's so important.
And you're saying to have a variety of different foods as well. Would you say the first time that you've tried this and you've, for example, had olives, let's say, and they didn't eat the olives, but maybe they just didn't feel like them that time, but the next time to have olives, because the next time they may feel, was it?
And look, that's certainly a thing about vegetables, that they are bitter, mostly. So we take years to actually get to enjoy them in their even like more natural state. So for instance, I always ask my parents, but when was the first time you actually enjoyed a plate of steamed vegetables with just a drizzle of olive? You probably were an adult, and thought this was fabulous. To get there, there are many steps that you have undertaken in life. And so food is more palatable, vegetables are palatable when they are cooked often, or you can have them raw with all sorts of dips and things, but You know, cooking is good, having cheese, I'm a dietitian, but I'm not against cream or butter personally, and then olive oil, and then, you know, you need fat, you need seasoning to make things and food palatable. And I always say, human beings cook. They're the only species that cooks, and that is in itself so interesting to us. We cook.
Should we maybe get to the other questions quickly? What was the other questions, just to see if we can help you guys? And we've got Candace. My son...
meat, fruit or vegetable. Look, I would say, how old is he?
This is Candace, sorry.
Yeah, Candace, how old is your son? I don't know. When they're very little, kids sometimes are reluctant to eat meat. It requires a lot of effort because they need to learn to chew. And so chewing can be tiring. And, you know, for instance, for these particular kids, then you want to try meat at lunchtime, perhaps not at dinner, so they can have a real go when they're not too tired. And then, you know, it takes about 3 years to develop your full set of teeth and to develop the movements that you need to chew properly. So it doesn't happen overnight, it's a learning curve. And then we tend to give really soft food to our kids for the rest of their lives, but we shouldn't. We should give, you know, sometimes a bone or something to roll on. I laugh, but really the reason kids, to develop a good set of teeth, the second set of teeth, you need to have some chewing opportunities. There has to
it's not just the muscles.
Yeah, there has to be some wear and tears on your teeth, apparently, for the second set to really find its place properly. As we evolve, we are getting smaller and smaller mouths.
Are we?
With smaller, yeah. And so that's why we need to take our teeth off, you know, our kids' teeth off, because they don't have the room anymore. But that's because we eat soft foods. So giving the opportunity to chew is a good way to eventually get your kid to like food and meat. And look, if you find that there's something really wrong with chewing, then you go and see a speech therapist. They're the ones who help with chewing issues.
Zoe, almost 3 years old, refuses to eat all fruit. Has older sister who eats everything. Have tried not to pressure. Has tried variety. Have tried offering countless times. Platters. It always offered and takes them off. He's fussy with all foods.
So it's so interesting. Well, he eats vegetables, then I take it. Does he?
He says here, he's fussy with all foods, but fruits is my main concern at the moment.
Okay, so I would say, well, try to see food from a almost like a neutral point of view, where they're all equal, right? And then you provide them on the table, and then you do French-style family dinner, by the way, where you put the food on the table and you serve the kids, and you ask them if they want them more. You give them small portions. Often parents will give huge plates and huge portions. That can be really daunting for
overwhelming
young kids. If you work with the elderly as well, they'll find it very daunting, and they will refuse food when there's too much on their plate. I don't know whether it's going back to childhood, but you know, I mean, the people who don't eat in the retirement homes are the ones who were forced to eat specific foods, and other people who are really overwhelmed by food as well. So you always put small portions, and you give them the opportunity to have a second serve, a third serve, until they say they're not hungry anymore. So treat the food all as equals, and not, because when you say it's not eating fruit, you're worried about nutrients here. You want to have the choice of food, including your fruit, on the table, and then let them do their own discovery. So you want to model how eating works well for you and how you enjoy it. You say you put no pressure. I mean, pressure is so tricky. It's the trickiest thing to work around. But you can model how you love food, how you enjoy food with your husband. You can cook, you can involve your child in cooking, you can go to the market, you can garden, you can do all these things that will enable to improve familiarity until your child is actually ready to learn, and ready in a way to learn by themselves, you know, to have the desire to try these things, knowing that there's no pressure.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think we've answered all the questions. Let's see. So Zoe, Amanda, Candace, I think that's everyone for the moment. Is that
I think that's
yeah, that is.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we really hope that that we've helped you guys. And as mentioned, if you, after the video and after we sort of jump off live, if any other questions that you have, put them in the comments, and we will definitely schedule that in for the next time that we actually have a Facebook Live with Marie. But for the moment, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Woohoo! Round of applause.
Let's have dinner.
See you guys. Take care. Bye.